Welcome everyone to the start of a new series, and this will be on Aurora 4X. Get used to the visuals of this background because that is pretty much the most beautiful the game will be. Once we actually get into the game, things are going to become a little bit less impressive in terms of graphics, but Aurora 4X by far one of, if not the best 4X game ever made, and that's really high praise because you have the likes of the whole Civilization series going on, and there's a lot of good 4X games out there. I really like the genre in general, but considering this is just one man's accomplishment, and on top of that, that the game is free. If you do like a performance per cost model, obviously this has infinite value because it's free. So what more can you say about a game if it's one of the best games without having any kind of cost associated with it? And then when you take the cost into account, well, of course, its value just increases infinitely because it's free. So, Aurora 4X, a space 4X game. We're going to start in the Sol system, and we're going to start branching out into different systems from there. Your standard 4X space game. If you have never played Aurora 4X or never seen it, you can kind of think Distant Worlds universe, but a lot more. This is incredible to say. More detail even than Distant Worlds universe. I'm not sure, but I even suspect that Distant Worlds Universe got their model for the economy from Aurora 4X. But anyways, it's just a really fantastic game, and I'm really excited to bring it to you. Now, one of the things you have to say about Aurora 4X is that it allows very easily a sandbox mode, and I think it lends itself extremely well to a role-playing environment because this is one of the few games where you can actually have an interesting game just staying in your initial system and building up your different technologies and mining the different planets and colonizing the different planets. And you don't need an enemy presence to put pressure on you because there's already so much going on just in the basic internal empire management. There's a lot going on at all times, so there's just no step, there's no point at which this game is not involved. So that said, because it's very easy to just kind of turtle in your initial system, especially with the startup options we'll be choosing, and I'll talk more about that in a moment, I'm going to force upon myself a role-playing shell. And that role-playing shell will be, at least to start, we are going to kind of try to follow the timeline of Star Trek. So we are going to be starting in 2025, which is the game's default, and my goal will be to achieve this after the end of World War III, which we're going to assume that World War III happened and is already finished by 2025, considering that over 90% of the population of the planet will be wiped out. It's not probably a big stretch to imagine that some kind of nuclear devices would be involved. So yeah, it won't take... It probably doesn't need to be a very long war for the end of the war to happen, considering how quickly like a nuclear holocaust situation would take. Anyway, I don't like to even think about that because it's such a perverse possibility. But let's just imagine that whatever happened in World War III that left Earth down to a population of 500 million instead of whatever 6+ billion that we have right now. After the end of World War III on Earth, scientist Zephram Cochrane built Earth's first warp-capable vessel, the Phoenix, and that was in 2063. And that is the timeline I am going to give us. The first objective we have is to get a jump engine capable ship out of the solar system by 2063. The reason I'm putting this constraint on myself is because I think that one of the best ways of playing this game is to turn off the initial NPRs. If you leave NPRs on by default, what they're going to do is begin expanding themselves. They'll be on a similar timeline than you will be on, except for we'll also be doing conventional, and I want to make sure I check this, and I'm going to put this up to 10 just before I forgot, I recorded this and I forgot to do that, so before I forget this time, let me just do that. They would be on a similar timeline than us, which means that they would also expand out, and you'll notice that although I could put this to 0, I don't like to do that, there's a race generation chance even when the NPRs explore other systems. And that's how other alien races are generated in this game. It's through exploration. When you enter a system, first the system is created. And if there are enough habitable planets, and you can see the conditions on the screen right here in the pop-up box. If there are enough eligible planets, then it rolls the dice. RNG does its thing to determine if those planets will be occupied by a new race or if they will be just empty and available, for you to colonize, for example. I'm going to leave this percentage really low, even though we will be, it's going to be up to us because I'm turning off NPRs by default. It's going to be up to us to trigger the first NPR. And I'm even going to leave this at 20. So this is going to make the universe slightly less populated. But basically what I want is, okay, 10. I really want us to do most of the exploring. Yeah, I think I'll put it down to 5. Whoops, not 52. 5. Because what I want from this game is kind of a Star Trek feel, at least in the beginning. I want us to eventually create the Enterprise. And that Enterprise is going to be this perfect phrase here, deep space exploration vehicle. What I have in mind is after creating the first warp capable vessel, which for us is not warp, but it's going to be a jump engine capable vessel by 2063. That gives us not quite 40 years, 38 years to get it done. I think that's doable. It will be pushing it. And it means that we're going to have to cut some corners that would be useful for military stuff. But in order to get the exploration vessel out there, we're going to sacrifice military a little bit. And that is going to mean that I'm going to have to cut down the difficulty a bit. Not only because we're going to be doing things but somewhat min-max inefficient, but also because conventional start versus trans-Newtonian. I mentioned how the NPRs are created. How they are scaled up, so considering we're starting with none, let's say it takes 50 years for us to encounter a system which has the right setup, and we roll the dice from there, and an NPR decides the game decides an NPR will be created there. Then they take the game start and the current year, they take how many years have passed basically since game start, and they ramp up the civilization. They basically give them a population and research points which scale according to how many years have passed. Now, if we do things very inefficient, that means the NPRs, like the average NPR, will be more advanced than us. And since we will be doing very early exploration, 2063, and on top of that we will also be doing this conventional start, they don't care the number of years that passes. They don't care whether you did your trans-Newtonian start, which starts you already able to build spaceships, etc. But since we're doing the conventional start, they don't take that into consideration. The scaling for them is the same whether you do trans-Newtonian start or conventional, which means kind of you need to give yourself a little bit of a bonus if you're doing conventional start. And I'm going to do that. I'm going to take this down to 80. So again, just to explain, I think that 80% is not an unreasonable amount for people who are beginning the game. If you're going to do your first game and you plan on expanding out and not just turtling in Sol the whole time, 80% is not a bad number to use. It kind of makes the game more relaxed, that when you encounter NPRs, you have less chance of being just terminated immediately. And like I said, we'll be doing things a little bit inefficient because I'm going to be making this Enterprise ship with shields and all these things that just don't really make sense in the context of this game. Because this game, I would say, is more based on I would say David Weber's series on Honor Harrington, also known sometimes as the Honorverse series. I would say that this game is almost the perfect representation or the perfect framework for David Weber's universe, his Honorverse. Missiles are king. Unfortunately, the Enterprise doesn't have any missiles. They have phasers and and the photon torpedoes. Now, the photon torpedoes, I think, I kind of want to model them as missiles because that would make our ship significantly better. But if I want to be very honest, I think that the Enterprise has to use plasma carronades, which are probably, almost certainly the description that best fits photon torpedoes. On top of that, phasers, I don't know if they're plasma beams or, particle beams or lasers. I think that they're lasers. Based on the damage effects and all that, I'm pretty sure that lasers are the best for modeling the phasers. So having lasers and plasma carronades on a ship means that it has to be very fast. But unfortunately, this ship is going to be very slow because I don't remember, if somebody can correct me in the comments, I don't remember, is the Enterprise supposed to be a deep space 5-year mission, or is it a 10-year mission? I can hear the words, the Enterprise's deep space, 10-year mission and deep in space, or something like that. Was it 5 years? I don't remember. But we plan on making this ship at least 5, maybe even 10 years of deep space exploration. Why do I even mention that? People are probably already wondering, does that mean fuel? What does that mean? Actually, the designs in Aurora 4X are so wonderfully, I would say, realistic, or they model how ships will actually have to be, that maintenance and maintenance life is taken into consideration. And I don't just mean things going obsolete and needing a refit a la Rule the Waves. I mean that you actually have each component with a maintenance score, which the higher the score is actually the worse. That means it takes more maintenance parts to fix. And that also means the higher chance it is to break. And you roll for these things. I mean, there's a lot of random events occur. Eventually, parts break on a ship and they have to be repaired. That means you have to carry a lot of engineering bays along in order to fix those things. So it's really perfect. It fits even the Star Trek universe. It fits pretty well. Just the only downside is we won't be using missiles. And missiles are, I think, far and away the best offensive, and some would even say the best defensive weapon that you can get. All right, now I've kind of prattled on quite a long time about using the Star Trek framework. And that's again because considering we don't have any... Oh boy. I've gone and done it. There it is. Trying to keep this guy somewhere I can see. Because we're not going to put any initial starting systems, starting NPRs, we could just turtle and Sol indefinitely. But I don't think that that's a very interesting game. It's probably a good thing to do as a beginner, just to spend a lot of time in your first system. Sol, if you have Sol generated, or whatever system you start in if you don't use Sol. It's very easy to just kind of play a boring playthrough. And I want to make things exciting, so these are the things that I have. I'm not going to go through all the reading of this, but basically I took away the key phrases that we want to put into this role-play-ish series on Aurora 4X. So we will be playing as the United Federation of Planets, even though we only start off on Earth. And technically, by the way, in 2150, a world government, United Earth, was formed that included virtually all of the old nations on Earth. So I think our empire probably would be best known as United Earth. But eventually it's going to expand to incorporate like Mars, Moon, other planets. So I'm just immediately going to be calling ourselves the United Federation of Planets. And all this is kind of just whatever you want it to be. We want the main empire theme to be in the United States. Commander theme is English. That's fine. I don't remember, if somebody can correct me, I think which one of these actually allows for the naming of the systems, because we don't want real world to star systems used, and I'll explain this in a moment, but I don't know how the theme of the different systems you explore is controlled. How do the names of the new systems, how are those handled? I think it's in the racial category, racial pop-up window that you control those things, but I don't remember. So if somebody can let me know, that'd be great. Okay, so obviously the first thing I already talked about, 2063, we need to have a jump-capable ship, and we need to jump. Then the next thing that is important is in the year 2119, so Zephram Cochrane would be pretty old by that point, but anyways, an aging Zephram Cochrane opens the Warp 5 complex on Earth in the hope of building a vessel that would be the fastest human starship at the time. Eventually, this project would yield the Enterprise NX-01, Earth's first deep space exploration vessel. So that's the next goal we're going to have, is we want a jack of all trades, wonder child exploration ship, and we want that by 2119. Not only that, but because I think that's actually too long of a time to go, I am going to bump that up. I was thinking of either bumping it up, like 2119 minus 2063 is 56 years. So I was thinking, okay, 56 years after game start, but that seems too early. What about 30 years before this? Eventually, I'm just going to say, let's do 20 years before this, because that also happens to be the nice way we can just say, we need to get the Enterprise, the Wonder Child Explorer, deep space, long-term exploration vessel out by the year 2099, which is to say, in the 21st century. It needs to be out. It needs to leave Sol, like leave its berth at home, its dockyard, and be deployed by 2099. So by 2099, we want the USS Enterprise, the NX-01, and these are the things that I want. Lasers, shields, and then 10-year, or I guess I put here already that I want a 10-year mission for maintenance and for crew morale, because you also need to keep enough crew berths so that enough crew on board that you can rotate them. So you need more crew for the longer that you need to rotate, and the more crew facilities for, like, it's abstracted to include like entertainment or whatever crew would need for a long-term deployment. We're going to need 10 years of both maintenance and crew lifespan, or I don't know, I'm blanking on the word, but the amount of deployment time that we can get from our crew. And then I'm just going to put 5 years for fuel, just because 5 years of fuel is already an insane. We're going to need, this is already going to be a huge ship, and to put fuel on it for 5 years is kind of already insane. So I'm planning to just make it so that it can drop by and get refueled somewhere every 5 years. So and it'll actually have to come home after 10 years to do retrofits, to give the crew shore leave, all those things. Now, another thing that I was questioning again is this torpedoes. Can I do missiles? Probably not. I'll probably do plasma carronades. Unfortunately, that means the ship, in order to be effective in combat, these all energy weapons, any non-missile weapons, are extremely short range compared to missiles, which means you have to be fast to close the distance. So that means that this ship has to be huge and fast, which is just basically almost an impossible undertaking. But I kind of relish the challenge, so I think it'll be a lot of fun. Okay, other things. Remember, United Earth was the name of the government on Earth, and we are just calling ourselves the United Federation of Planets, which is going to be a combination of both United Earth and then also eventually the United Federation of Planets, otherwise known as just the Federation. That's what we'll be calling ourselves, just the Federation. So a few points about what we want to do. So I just left this in here. I don't know why. Just something happened in 2067. That was probably another time frame I was considering for maybe I want to do some kind of probe launch in 2067. I don't know. But the Prime Directive, this is important for us to look at in terms of what are we doing with the exploration ships we send out. And it's also another reason why I want the game difficulty lower, much lower. So, Starfleet acts, this is the Prime Directive, Starfleet acts under a Prime Directive of non-interference with developing worlds or their internal politics. And this is, by the way, not based on the humans, but this is based on the Vulcans' initial interactions with the Federation. That's mainly the Vulcan influence coming to life here. Starfleet has been shown to handle scientific, defense, and diplomatic missions, although its primary mandate seems to be peaceful exploration in the search for sentient life. And that's the key right there. We will be doing scientific, defense, diplomatic stuff, all that, but mainly what this fun for Aurora 4X gameplay will be about is sending the Enterprise out and about and making contact with new MPRs. That's what I want, and because if the MPRs we run into are big bullies and they just want to kill us, if they're better than us, they will just kind of ruin the series. And I kind of want to let the Enterprise solo try to dance around the ships, or I don't know how we'll roleplay, but I think it'll be a lot of fun just to interact with different MPRs. Some of them will be just hostile. Some of them will be able to engage in some kind of diplomatic relation, maybe become friends with. Maybe they join our the new version of the United Federation of Planets. Who knows? But if they were stronger than us, probably what would happen is the Enterprise would just die. And there's still probably going to be some MPRs which spawn, which will give us some trouble. Where I am leaving, for example, these non-MPRs, they're very difficult to handle if you do anything but the precursors. So we'll be taking off the Star Swarm. So just be very careful if you're playing your first game with the bottom two. I suggest only leaving the precursors on. And because I don't want to trigger, the invaders probably would just kill us immediately, because we're not going to be doing a very min-max defensive start. And I don't think that these scale with difficulty at all. I think that they are just, this is only for how MPRs scale. Yeah, we can see here it's starting size, MPR population, how it scales with time, their research rate, their growth rate, all those things. So we'll be doing 80% for that. We'll turn these two off. Precursors, this still could be fun for the Enterprise to interact with. Okay, so let me see what other stuff we want. We want at least 5 soul jump points. This just avoids the way the path develops for the 1,000 systems. Every time you you jump into a new system, it kind of rolls which ones it'll be connected to, how many it'll be connected to, and which ones. It's possible that if you set the soul jump points too low, although it would be nice in the sense that you might not have to defend many jump points, it could happen that you just end up in a dead end right away, and then you're stuck, which is not good. You have to wait for a wormhole or something. I don't even know how you would get out of that situation. Nonetheless, so I think a good rule of thumb is to set this to at least 5. I have set it for 4 before, and I was okay in that series because I do like less jump points in the initial Soul system because I do like to turtle. But obviously, with the lower difficulty and the style of play here, we're very non-turtley, so we will not be. It won't be a big deal to have more. Okay, so this is just the settings I already talked about that we'll be able to generate NPRs with these chances, but do not do non-trans-Newtonian races. Otherwise, every single NPR that you encounter will be non-trans-Newtonian, and I don't even think, even if you give them technology, there's a way for them to move out from conventional. Although it would be nice because definitely there's a lot of I think like the defining series for Star Trek was Star Trek: The Next Generation. I think that also Deep Space Nine had some good contributions, but I think a lot of the lore of Star Trek was most set from The Next Generation. And in The Next Generation, you have this situation a lot where Picard and crew, they come up against much less civilized or at least much less advanced nations. And it's all about them trying to not give away their technology, but to not interfere with the politics of the planet, but yet still solve these problems, which made that show so interesting. Now, we can't really roleplay that anyways, because we can't, this is not an adventure game, so we can't go down to the planet and solve problems, which is why we're also going to avoid this. But it still will be interesting to have slightly less advanced civilizations that we can try to deal with, maybe in a friendly way, or maybe not. I'm not going to use any simplifications, which means that, again, we will have to worry about maintenance failures, and that's going to require some interesting design decisions. I'm going to be using realistic commander promotions, which is just the only way you should play. I don't recommend not doing this because that means you have to promote yourself, and I can only imagine that this adds, for every hour of gameplay with this checked, it probably becomes double the amount of time. Another hour, every hour you play with this checked, you would now spend 2 hours without it checked. That extra hour just going into promotions and stuff, which I don't think is a good idea. Keeping it checked means that it's done automatically. Now the second one is pretty interesting. Commander political bonuses. So if we have realistic promotions, this means that there's nepotism, there's favoritism, there's people with political clout, like their father was a senator or something, and that means that there's a hidden score. If you just do realistic promotions, every commander is promoted based on their skill. But it's like some kind of tally of what their bonuses are that they add. Okay, this person adds this 10% of this, so we'll add 10 points. They add 20% of this, we'll add another 20 points. 30 points total to their promotion score. Then somebody else has, 25% and 20%. So they're at 45% promotion points. But this political bonus adds a hidden modifier, a political one, which means that, you could have a 0% bonus in everything, but the person has a 100-point bonus in political sense, which just means that he has good connections. So he gets promoted up the chain of command. Very interesting, and I don't know whether I'll leave it on or not. I don't mind creating, depending on how people interact with this first video, if people want this on or off. I don't think I'm almost positive I will not be renaming commanders because that, again, would be so much work. But I plan on doing the names for ship classes and the individual ships themselves as well. That'll be my way. And then we'll just abstract that the name of the ship has some captain attached to it. The same way we do with Rule the Waves. People submit their names, but I try to remember which captain is for which name still. So we'll try to do something similar to that. So forget about the commanders in terms of renaming because it would just be way too much work for me to actually rename. I will be doing inexperienced fleets, which means that they have to work up, which means that you actually have to put them on task force training. I think that's really cool. We'll definitely model that. And I'm deselecting real star systems because in order to get nebulae and to avoid getting very poorly named systems, which is what a lot of systems in our Milky Way galaxy, the actual galaxy, they're very poorly named. You have a lot of NN19135 and WITE 2046. They don't have very interesting names, not all the time. So leaving this off means that they'll be, as I mentioned, I don't remember if this commander theme is what changes it, if this main empire theme is what changes the names. But it does give them all interesting names. And then, like I said, because they're not based on our actual galaxy, you have a lot more variety of the systems that you can get, which is fun. So I recommend leaving this not selected. For orbital motion for planets and moons, we'll keep this checked so that we have the planets moving. I think that's great. But we will not leave it on for asteroids just because it has a potential to slow down your game if there's too many asteroids in too many systems that it has to model the movement of. On top of that, even if I think the civilian economy is actually the bigger offender in terms of slowing down the game in the late game, but it doesn't really impact anything to have asteroids move or not. I guess it means that your exploration ship has to try a little harder. But I kind of like it because you might have an asteroid near a jump point, and then you can use, since the jump points don't orbit by some magic, I think it's acceptable to not have the asteroids orbit either. And then you can put some kind of defensive structure on an asteroid which is close to a jump system, which is the closest you can get to it'll be a non-orbital defense platform. You can also use orbital. You can also build, a space station essentially and tow it over. You actually have to build a tug. It's amazing. This game is really amazing. You build a tug and you tow it over to the jump point. You can drop it there. But we will not be using orbital motion for asteroids. And the same system truth isn't going to impact us because we won't have NPRs sharing our same planet. So there it is. I think I covered everything I wanted. I already have a custom Federation starship flag I added to the game. I hope that works out. So let me go ahead and drag these over to the other window because we won't need them anymore. And let's go ahead and generate our game. Okay, so race generation complete. Starting industry has been created. Did I do it correctly? No missile bases? Good. I do not have missile bases for conventional start. Always leave this checked for conventional start, which we're doing. Because if you don't, the missile bases are just a disaster. You don't want to use them. Okay, so now any NPRs will now be created, which we luckily have already set to 0, so it shouldn't take any time. And the precursors we will run into when we explore at some point. Okay, so this shouldn't take very much time, and then we'll be into Sol. But I'll call the episode to a close here. This is just the setup video. I'll probably take a peek at our mineral allotment off camera just to make sure we have something reasonable to deal with. And, okay, blah, blah, blah. It's not responding, but I think it's just generating something right now. But I'll give you a glimpse at what the game actually looks like. What we'll be staring at for the for the majority of this series is the system map. Okay, good. So I left on commander political bonuses. Well, let's just turn that off here. I thought I turned it off. Oh, wait, no. I'm leaving it on. I don't care, really. I guess we have the difficulty set to 80%, so it doesn't really matter. Oh, yeah, somebody let me know. Why did I call this? Okay, let's just redo it real fast. Let's do a new one. Let's not call this new game. Let's call this. So what I plan to do is Star Trek at first, but after we have the Enterprise out and about, once we've expanded to come into contact with maybe 5 or so NPRs, I'm going to transition into like an Honorverse game, because that's when we can actually get the long-range dreadnoughts with their huge missile configurations. I think that'll be very interesting. So we have to unfortunately change all this back. 5. Let's do 20. I don't recommend messing with this. That's fine. This is all fine. United Federation of Planets. Earth player. United States, English, conventional, 10. I'm giving myself 10 research facilities so that we can get to 2163 with the jump engines a little bit easier, just to make sure we can accomplish that goal. I just don't know myself how easy it'll be, so I'm trying to pad my margin of error a little bit. Okay, we wanted no real-world star systems. I'm going to turn this off, and I'll turn it back on when I load back in if people want it. But just by default, I'll turn it off. Just because if we don't really look at the commanders a whole lot, it just essentially makes our commander pool a lot worse. So I'm going to leave it off, but if people really want it, I'll turn it back on. Do we have everything we want? No, yes, no, yes. Everything looked good. 520, 0. Let's put this down to 5 so we don't have too many points. Generate Sol, yes. Okay. So let's try this again. Star Trek Let's Play. Create. Take a drink, wait for it to finish. Just wanted to tease out that start a little bit longer. Sorry about that. I really wanted this to be a 20-minute video. Always happens. Now we're up to 30. Darn it anyhow. And then we'll just load into the game. It'll be beautiful. And I'm really excited about this series. I really like the idea of role-playing all the different things that we have. The different mission criteria we have. Okay, there it is. So let's put this to a side for a second. I'll come back. I need to load the custom flag. Yep, this is the one. Command. I want to see commander. Political bonuses unchecked. Okay, good. No run-ons. Everything looks good. Okay, good. One cool thing to do is you can have disasters as well with the sun warming or the sun cooling down. I plan to do that for my next Aurora 4X gameplay, which will force us out of the solar system very quickly. So anyways, let's go ahead and start. We've done it. We've started. What is this? Well, actually, this is the game. The actual game running happens in this little window. But in order for us to actually make any sense of this, let's go to the system map, F3. And there we have it. Sol. And all her many asteroids. We're going to have to do a little bit of display modification to make sense of this. But if we zoom in enough, and if I just deselect asteroids for a moment, let me just put minerals only. There we have it. This is the solar system. Earth, Mars, Venus, Mercury. Should be Venus, Mercury. There it is, Earth. Yeah, okay. This is it. This is our solar system, and this is what we'll be looking at a lot of. So then we can also take a look at our starting planet. Right now we have 1,000 conventional industry. We'll need to change that into normal industry. In order to do that, though, we need to first research the important thing, trans-Newtonian technology. So what do we have to start? It looks like we have a reasonable amount. Oh, we've gotten lucky, actually. We have CP and LG. Even though it's only 0%, they will eventually increase their bonus just by researching. And we're also going to need... Oh god, we didn't get power and propulsion, which is the thing we need the most of in order to get a jump engine in time. But that's okay. I'll probably also... maybe I'll just create some more scientists for myself just because I don't want to be... Nah, I think it's fine. We have a good... This is a good pool of candidates already. The thing I wanted to show is the racial window. So this is us. We have a color. I'll probably change this to the actual color, but if I can select a flag, I know that this window here was telling me we have various flags here. Let me see if this will disappear every time, but I'll just leave it here for a second. So if I go to 399, should be the last one. There it is. I have the Federation, United Federation of Planets. I have their logo. The other ones I have in here that could be interesting is like if we chose 126. This is apparently the Imperial Japanese flag, 0126. Yeah, there it is. So it is Imperial Japan. But we'll be using this flag. So I'll try to off camera. I'll get this color to match this, which would only make sense. But yeah, United Federation of Planets. I think this is this the theme that names the star systems? This is the important thing I want to know. The other systems, how are they named? Or is it the secondary commander name theme? I don't know. So somebody let me know. But otherwise, that's going to conclude the setup video. Stay tuned for episode number 1, the actual game start. I'll do a brief recap of the setup in there. And feel free, if you're trying to learn this game, I'll put in the video description, and maybe even I'll pin a link to where you can download the Aurora wrapper or the how to get the game itself. And feel free to ask questions on my Discord, which will be somewhere in the video description. And also, if you have questions, the Aurora 4X subreddit is incredibly helpful, and I'll probably provide a link to that as well. So, thanks for watching the first video. I can't tell you how excited I am to get this started, and I look forward to seeing you in the next, which will actually be episode number 1. So that's probably where I'll do my usual peddling for likes and all that. So I wouldn't worry about it on this one. This will eventually be part of the playlist, but this is just a setup video. If you have questions about Aurora 4X, feel free to ask on the Discord as well. I'll probably create a separate Aurora 4X channel because I suspect there will be a lot of questions. So look forward to that as well if you're interested. Other than that, thanks for watching, and until the next episode, until episode number 1, take care.